The Washington Post has released yet another article about the so-called assassination plot against Sikh separatist Gurpatwant Singh Pannu. However, the evidence remains just as dense as before. This expose, as they call it, has been compiled after conversations with officials from 6 countries, including USA, UK, India, and even Germany, who all spoke very conveniently on the condition of anonymity. Given the Washington Post's penchant for presenting selective facts, we need to set the record straight. Over the course of this segment, we will discuss the article, what it says and what it deliberately hides from this spotlight. Joining us at this point is Captain Alok Bansal, international affairs expert. Also with us is Mahesh Sachdev, former diplomat. Sumit Peer, political commentator, is joining us live. Joyita Basu, editor of the Sunday Guardian, is also live with us on the broadcast. Let me bring you in here first. Captain Bansal, what do you make of yet another foreign press article trying to cast aspersions on India?
Aspersions for some time on India. In fact, they are extremely jealous and uncomfortable with India's rise. India's phenomenal rise has actually ruffled a lot of feathers. In fact, many in the Western world were not expecting this sort of phenomenal rise that India has actually shown, and that has actually led to various consternation within various capitals of the Western world. And in fact, this article is nothing but a manifestation of their frustration with India's unbridled rise.
Okay. Let me also get in Mahesh Sachdev to share his view on this. Ambassador Sachdev, your viewpoint on what is written, what all are complete falsehoods, what the objective is of writing this article and trying to target India once again?
I think the article is quite interesting and topical. However, it presents a one-sided narrative. And I would like to see it as the manifestation of an adage, do as I say and not as I do. A country that specializes in foreign assassinations, including that of Osama bin Laden, arrests Noriega, president of a country, Panama, because he had said something inconvenient about President George Bush the Senior, dismantles and destroys Allende, Chile, for a leftist regime, for nationalizing copper mines belonging to ITT, and above all, Julian Assange, who, for the crime of similar expose, in fact far more comprehensive and vivid, is being hounded for nearly 15 years now, after WikiLeaks published gross human rights violations in Iraq based on classified data. United States has done everything to get him back to US and make an example of him. So from that country, mouthpiece of how should I put it? Expression of freedom. We are told that we are somehow culpable without offering a shred of evidence except hearsay and wiretaps. Now, on one hand, they say that someone in RNAW, including the hierarchy and all sort of speculations are made, was involved. On the other hand, they say nothing about the activities of a person. The 2 persons, Najjar and Pannun, they also very inventively link it all up with the killing of some militants inside Pakistan, on which even Pakistani government has not blamed us formally, has offered no evidence. So all that in the name of an expose spanning 6 countries, etc., etc. I think it it is underwhelming, to say the least. Thank you.
Yes, Sumit Peer, come in here with your take on this, because Sumit, it's not the first time and perhaps not the last time either that such attempts will be made to try and bring down India's image abroad. Do you believe the timing also is suspicious, as it comes at a time when India is in general election mode?
Uday, thank you very much for having me on your show. When I look at this article, the first thing that comes to my mind is somebody trying to write a fiction movie, or is somebody trying to give a plot for some writers to write a fiction novel? Because if you look in this, there is no shred of evidence. It's all the manifestation of their mind. And the people who are talking about this is the country who has bombed various countries 33 times in the world and killed a few million people. Well, that is okay. That is for the human rights, that is for the democracy, and that is for the freedom of expression. They can do whatever they want in the world. Here, they're alleging there is some RNAW officer, Vikram Yadav. He got go ahead to eliminate Pannu and Nijar. And, there was Mr. Goel had approved it, the then RNAW chief. And then Mr. Ajit Doval possibly knows it all. It all looks Alice in Wonderland. It looks a Chanda Mama when I look at it. But what is the evidence you're talking about that? Because the problem here is, Uday, they are trying to bring this ghost to India's doorstep where there's nothing like that. And honestly, India doesn't do any such assassinations, and India has not done any such assassinations. Pannu is not a problem which can really impact India in such a way. He has some nuisance value. He can keep on shouting few slogans. He's a media baby now. And if you look at him from a political and from an intelligence point of view, he is a fired bullet. He has nothing left in him. So why should India go and bother to do this? This talks about their bias in the mind. You see, elections are going on. They want to somehow, if you read through the article carefully, Uday, they want to somehow bring it home and link it to Prime Minister Modi. They are talking of Mr. Samant Goel, then they are talking of Mr. Doval possibly, then they are talking, possibly maybe the PM. So again, they are saying, India is doing this, India is trying to eliminate, America's citizens, Indian Prime Minister allows all these things. For the sake of God, we don't do it. Why don't you understand? How many countries have we bombed? How many millions people have we killed? You have done this. You have done genocides in the whole world. What Ambassador sir was right, he's saying you have arrested leaders who eliminated Saddam Hussein. Where are the weapons of mass destruction? For that. And what Saudis did with Khashoggi, your Anthony Blinken went and apologized to MBS, and MBS did not give him audience for 24 hours. He was waiting for even to, give him audience, and he waited 24 hours to say, sir, I'm sorry. Now, with all those double standards on some figment of imagination where you're leaking selective news to the media, where you are trying to create a mole out of a mountain, I see it as a blatant and direct interference with the Indian elections. Because look at the timing of the article. Indian elections are going, 2 phases are gone. They look very good for Prime Minister Modi, 5 more to go. So you time it at the time when it is the mid of the election and see if some votes can be swinged, some things can be happen, some international pressure can be built, and how can you stop Prime Minister Modi from becoming the Prime Minister again? That is what the agenda seems to be. But unfortunately, they have lost the plot. These selective media leaks in a newspaper in Washington does not change anything here. And Uday, I know one thing. I know we have not done it, we will not do it. But my personal opinion is, when it comes to the safety and security of 1.4 billion people, India has any to every options open. And, to be honest, if we wanted something to happen, it would have happened by now. It doesn't, it's not, there's nothing called a half-baked cake. It is baked or it is not baked. So that message has to go loud and clear. So, you're trying to make a story. I love the fiction in it. I would say somebody in Bollywood or Tollywood can make a movie out of it. It will be a super hit. Obviously, the characters are so imaginary and, something is a good fiction to have about. Americans seem to have lost their mind. They don't know what they're talking about. Look at their double standards. Where are weapons of mass destruction? You're apologizing to MBS for Khashoggi. What have you done in Yemen? What are you doing in so many countries in the world? What have you done in Congo? What have you done in Iraq? How many people have you killed in Afghanistan? You are not talking about that. You're only talking about some alleged plot, somewhere, sources. Bhaiya, who are these sources? You have the sources on one side. You're saying everything is source based, but you're not talking about the person. What does a person with what does a plumber with a AK-47 mean? And what is Pannu? He is directly threatening my Prime Minister. He's threatening my External Affairs Minister. He's threatening my diplomats. He's threatening the peace and security of my country. He's saying, please do not go into Air India plane. I will bomb it. And then that is freedom of expression. And we have to explain ourselves, oh, on an alleged plot by something. These people in Washington Times, I think still they have this, you have this illusion and delusion. They rule the world. They can control the things. They can influence the politics of the world. I think they need to wake up. They need to live in the today's reality. Election is happening. And let me tell you, Washington Post and Mr. Ambassador of America in India, Mr. Garcia, Prime Minister Modi is coming and he's coming back. Modi 3.0 is going to happen, whether you like it or not. Ab ki baar, 400 bar. We'll cross the 400 mark. Admit all your articles. You can write a few more. Get a few more of people to write articles. Well, they do not matter. Don't bring these concocted, figments of imagination and try to manifest into something. They are unwarranted. They are uncalled for. They are mere imaginations and delusions which some people suffer. I think the person who has written this article, by the way, he has a very dubious track record. He should be taken for some medical treatment. I think he should need some medical help. Americans should spend money to get some medical help for the poor chap, rather than trying to make it a national, international issue. It is not, Uday. And in the last, if something has to be done or something will be done, it will be done. There's nothing called a half-baked cake.
Okay, let me take that across to Joyita Basu as well at this point. Joyita, what did you make of this article? What do you believe the objective was, and what all is false in it, what all is slanted, and what all is deviously put in?
Uday, first of all, I don't think this article is meant for the Indian audience, and I don't think that the article is even meant to influence Indian elections, because when you are looking at the Western press, they have near zero influence on Indian elections. Nobody except us, some of us, and that also people who can read English and who are always on social media and forwarding news items, except for us, no one is going to read this article. So when it comes to actually being able to influence in their ability to influence in the elections, it's zero, absolute zilch, nothing. So who are they actually? Then what is the target audience? The target audience is not India. The target audience is American. Are the Americans. No, who are the Americans? Policymakers, people in the think tank, people who are in a position to influence decision. You have to see it, you have to understand one thing. Whatever we see, any kind of propaganda that happens against India or any country for that matter, that always and always and always has the backing of at least a section of the US administration. If it is not coming directly that, okay, this is actually going on, so what is the game that is being played here? Number one is, you see, this what they are trying to do, Washington Post, as an extended arm of the US administration, what they are trying to do is that they are trying to give at least a section of the US government a handle over India to put pressure on us, number one. Basically, the attempt is to make us comply to certain demands that they have, and let's put it this way, the US also wants vassal states, okay, and India is not a vassal state. India refuses to be a vassal state. They saw what we did with the Ukraine situation. We stood up, we held on to our independent policy, because of which we are still suffering with that delayed visa for 2 years. So at the same time, if you are looking at what is going on in the US administration as well, the Biden administration, these departments, there are departments that work in silos. State Department in particular, it says that I have the control of foreign policy, but India's relationship with the state or state's hatred for India, it is well known by now. All these human rights reports, everything. Even for that matter, Mr. Garcetti, who is here, they are all reporting to the state, okay, maybe directly to Mr. Biden himself. So the State Department has this, terrible hatred for India. And most of the anti-India, anti-Modi narrative that is coming from the US administration, everything is coming from the State Department. So, but at the same time, what the State Department is not doing is they are not taking into confidence or not taking into consideration the relationship that other departments have with India, say for example, Defense Department. So as a result of which what is happening is that these woke people who are running the State Department, they are running amok. If you are looking at, this has to be seen again in the context of what has been going on in terms of US-India relationship. If you remember, we signed that critical technology transfer agreement, G4 engine, so many things have been signed up. So it was the State Department that was totally opposed to it. And it was, you see, so when you have got the State Department opposed very strongly to India, but there are certain sections of the administration that are very pro-India, including, say, for example, National Security Council, which also has Jake Sullivan. Jake Sullivan is very, well acquainted with Mr. Ajit Doval and all. So it's basically the attempt, to me, it seems like, to change the minds of people at upper echelons who will be basically willing and telling the India that no, we are not going, you are not our strategic partner because you do not have that kind of values. So basically what we are witnessing, this is what we are witnessing. Again, I am going to repeat, this article is not meant for India. This article is meant, it's to an extent, it's an interdepartmental politics. But yes, the State Department is using all these media outlets to build a narrative against India and ultimately influence policy, influence think tanks, influence people who are there. All the Washington think tanks, if you ask them, even now they are talking about, Mr. Ashley Tellis, that finger-wagging Ashley Tellis, who has been writing about America's bad bet on India. These are the people are trying to build up pressure groups so that any pro-India policy that the US government takes as a whole, that can be fixed and marred. That is the intention.
Okay. Let me, take that back to Sumit Peer as well. Sumit, how should all of this be countered? Is this best ignored? Should this be countered? What is the best response?
Uday, I think the counter has already come from the Ministry of External Affairs. They've already given their statement on that because we can't take shit lined up. They are casting aspersions on our Honorable Prime Minister, on the on the PMO, and on our National Security Advisor. Well, honestly, if State Department doesn't work in tandem with the Jack Sullivan's office, that is their problem. They have to go and fix their house. It's like the same thing. You remember there was an incident when this, Kamala Harris's niece was saying all kind of things about India. And, Kamala Harris said, okay, I don't know what is happening. If you have a broken house, you have to go and fix it. So we have responded it. The Indian media is talking about it. We have to send our message out because what are you trying to do? You are trying to create an image that the Indian Prime Minister or the Indian PMO is ordering killings at foreign soil, which is what we do not do. Is trying to eliminate the anti-India forces on the foreign soil, which we do not know. And they're saying the RNAW, which is basically a research and analysis organization, is some kind of a murder machine, which we do not do. So these things have to be countered because ultimately today, tomorrow, they will use all these things and they will use them at the right point of time to hurt the India's interest. They are getting that ammo ready. They will pile it up and it will be in a cold storage. It will be taken out at the right stage. Oh, these are the allegations against you. These are the allegations against you. These are the allegations you. We have to counter that. We have to challenge it, what we have done. On the media, we have to talk about it. And if they are giving a message to their people, let's also give a message in English to the people wherever we can reach. I think our channel also reaches there. Let's give them the same message. Your people in Washington Post are fiction writers. They are writing fiction. They should write novels rather than writing these articles. And whatever your intentions may be, your intentions are not going to work. And let me tell you one more thing, Uday. We have every right to protect our interests. Why did you eliminate this Qasim Soleimani? You eliminated Qasim Soleimani in broad daylight with a drone strike because you say it's a national security threat. So do you only have a national security threat? We don't have national security threats? Or is the United States of America going to determine and tell us who is our national security threat and who is not our national security threat? That thing is not going to work. And for that matter, Uday, everybody is a citizen of some country. Khashoggi was a Iranian citizen, right? And Pannun might be American citizen, somebody may be a Canadian citizen. So does that mean if you are a Western country citizen, if you are an American, if you are a Canadian, or if you are a British, you can hash plots against India, you can threaten my Prime Minister, you can threaten our diplomats, you can threaten our External Affairs Minister, and yet because you are American, you are British, or you are French, or you are German, we have to be like this, bhai sahab. Well, that thing has to go, that notion has to go. Why Pannu is not behind the bars? How are you letting Pannu go wild? Pannu is a Canadian citizen, Pannu is an American citizen. How does the so-called these Seven Eyes or whatever you call them, how come they are letting him go? Why Canadians or Americans are not able to tame him? What about him threatening to bomb our plans? What have you done on that? Why he is not in the prison? Because he's your goddamn asset. Pannu is an worn out, overused, and worn out, fired bullet of CIA. It's very, very clear. He is your asset. That is why you are doing it like that. Now, to protect him and to cover your tracks, you're coming up with the same figment of imagination stories, giving it to Washington Post, trying them to do it selectively, trying to create who Allah in the world, and oh, how bad India is, how bad Indian Prime Minister is, how bad Indian PMO is. This is all blatant attempt to protect and give patronage to anti-India forces and elements on your soil. What about Mr. Garcia when he's talking about blowing up an Air India plane? Do not go into Air India plane, I will blow it up. What have you done to such a terrorist? That is the question we should be asking you. Why is Pannu terrorist not in Guantanamo Bay? You pick anybody from Afghanistan, Syria, Yemen, anywhere in the world and land him in a Guantanamo Bay. He's a terrorist. If Pannu is not a terrorist, how was Osama bin Laden a terrorist? If Pannu was not a terrorist, how is Al-Zawahiri a terrorist? You are waiting for a disaster to happen. You are waiting for him to kill, to blow up a plane. Then you will say, oh, now we realize suddenly he's a terrorist. So your double standards and hypocrisy on terror has to be exposed, and that is exactly why we are doing. And do not give lessons to India on national security. We know what is our national security, and we'll do what is in the best interest of the national security. Uday.
Yes. Okay. Let me, quickly get in a comment from Captain Alok Bansal on whether you believe, Captain Bansal, that this is time for the elections. Is that no coincidence that it comes at a time when India is polling?
See, it is timed with India's elections, but I don't think so it could have any impact on Indian electorate. I agree with the previous speaker that it is probably timed for US policymakers. And as I said, US has a double standard. It's always had a double standards. US, as Sumit said, eliminated Sumit Peer. US has been indulging in acts of violence all over. And in fact, there are numerous acts of violence which US has indulged in, but it wants to castigate us. Firstly, they have no concrete proof of any involvement of anybody. It is more a hearsay, conjectures that have been used to construct this story. And coming out with this sort of a story, I think this is absolutely ridiculous, because please look at it. There was a time when US Senate passed a strictures against MBS. And then subsequently, you were actually standing and seeking support from MBS. In fact, US President was waiting to meet him. In fact, you sent Anthony Blinken and all that. So basically, where US interests are involved, they ignore all this. They were, in fact, willing to support all sorts of dictators, from Ferdinand Marcos to Noriega and everybody. If you look at it all over, most of these ghastly leaders, what happened to Salvador Anelad, elected Prime Minister of Chile, President of Chile, who was actually eliminated by CIA using their hush funds. So US has been indulging in this sort of activities, and when any country wants to assert its national interests, and whether it has been done or not, they construct such narratives to prevent such a thing from happening, probably trying to protect their so-called CIA assets, who they know are on the crosshairs. I think these stories have been concocted to create that sort of an impression.
All right, let me leave the last word to Ambassador Sachdev. Closing comment.
Thank you. Uday, I would like to bring in a couple of points. Firstly, in the cloak and dagger business of diplomacy, where diplomacy meets espionage, etc., most countries, including the big ones, have plan A and plan B. At one level, there are formal relations with between the governments, and they are okay. They are harmonious, and they are sort of progressive and talk nice things. At another level, there's plan B. What if Khalistan comes into being? Would we have any asset there? So that's plan B. And plan B has been kept alive, be it Canada, be it UK, be it US. And the assiduous attempts to keep the plan B alive is important. Now, the second point I have is the elections are not only in India. They are also in Canada next year. They are also in US. And in UK, anytime the Prime Minister says uncle, there would be elections. So And there are Sikh communities all over these three countries. Canada has the largest Sikh community outside India. Then comes UK, and third is United States. Now, Washington Post type of articles are meant to influence these communities and make them insecure, make them indebted to the host countries' governments, pro-establishments, and make them vote in a particular way. I think this is where I would like to stop.
Okay. Joyita, 30 seconds.
Well, the thing is, you see, what do you do with people like this? First of all, the dealing has to be done at the topmost level. That you see, you cannot come at us like this, and this whole narrative about an activist, basically a man who is a terrorist, you cannot go around calling him an activist. And if you are actually talking in terms of we being a major defense partner of the US, if the Joe Biden government is talking about India-US relationship being among the most consequential relationships of the 21st century, this is not how constructive relationships work, even when it comes to countries, number one. Number two, who is the larger enemy here? It is China. Okay, and if it is in the Indo-Pacific region, you cannot have an Indo-Pacific policy without India. So the whole point is that in spite of all the narrative building, in spite of whatever you are saying, it is ultimately India that is actually taking on China eyeball to eyeball confrontation, that they are standing there in the icy heights of the Himalayas. The Americans are not doing it, it's only the Indians who are doing it. You think the US can have an Indo-Pacific policy to take on China without India? No, it cannot. So until and unless the tiny and puny little desk officers of the State Department who are trying their best, the woke type who have come from all these universities where now you see all these Hamas half terrorists they are producing, there's woke type jihadi leftist kinds of people who are coming in and who are kind of deciding policy in places like State Department and all. They need to be read the Riot Act, and that can only happen by the topmost people in the US.
My thanks to all of our guests for joining us. We've run completely out of time.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.